I look, and here he is back at the same place, back behind the trees that he was before. Well, it couldn't be. But, there's no tracks where he come back before. So this time I'm not looking for deer. I keep my binoculars on him all the way. He slowly makes his way back. Gets right back to the spot where we'd separated, where I saw him come back to before. Turns to the right, goes up on and over the top of this knoll where you can look down into the ravine down there, exactly like before. Now this is starting to bother. So I go back out there, and I went over the knoll, and here he stands, right, looking down into the valley like I'd imagine he would be. But this time, although I was a little nervous.
There is nothing wrong with your podcast streaming service. We now control your device. This is not a test. This is podcast of the paranormal. Close your curtains and stay away from your windows. Lock your doors, turn off your lights. Get your snacks and drinks ready. Get to your basement or attic. The podcast is about to begin.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Podcast of the Paranormal. I'm here with Gabrielle.
Hello, everyone.
And we have our conclusion to our interview with Johnny.
Yeah, we're excited to bring you more of Johnny's stories. He certainly has lived a paranormal life. Who thought he would have more stories to make up a second episode? But we're really excited for you to hear the conclusion of his stories.
All right, let's jump right into it.
So time went on after Dad's death and all, and my youngest sister, Jerry, took care of the house and the paperwork on the financial stuff because it went to the 6 of us kids equally, and all that kind of stuff. But then my sister said, I'm not sure this was good for him, but anyway, my young sister says, well, her oldest daughter, Lola's her name, named after Mom. We call her Lou. Just got married again. She's got the 2 kids and all, and hadn't got a place. Says, how would you guys, the rest of us, feel about selling the house? The house wasn't worth much. Built around the turn of the century, either late 1800s or early 1900s. Dad gave $1,450 for the house I grew up in. Bought it all up off of my uncle, Dad's uncle, my great uncle. Had 3 acres with it and stuff. But we told him, that's fine, if they want to live here, and if it would help them. I said, the only thing is sell it even cheaper than what you might get for it for somebody else. So I had a niece to move in, her and her husband. They ended up having 2 more kids. She had 2 from a previous marriage. And her husband's name was John also. And I never noticed him treating his 2 natural kids any different from what he treated those 2 kids. To him, they were all his kids. So I married John for that. And, but, Lou said, well, yeah, I never really, saw anything here or anything. Said the kids complained, sometimes about it, but I never saw anything. But then she did say, but there was one thing, I can't remember what it was. But it wasn't seeing a ghost, but it was scary. And she said, but we haven't had any problem. Now, John was out of the Appalachians, and he was like, wanted to be considered a rough, tough guy, but he was a pushover. Not physical-wise, but mentally, he was a nice guy, but wanted to, be known as a, rough, I'll tear the head off and spit down their neck or something, talk like that, They had the house remodeled and all modern conveniences and stuff. Because there's one light in each room of that house hanging down on the cord of a light bulb at the end. That's how fancy. There was one room in the house that had a wall receptacle, and that was Mom and Dad's bedroom, which served as a family room. And that's where the radio was, and the 8-track tape player with Mom's hymns, and eventually at one time the TV. But anyway, John said that doors had been opening and closing all by themselves, and doors unlocking and all. I could tell that, he was concerned. And of course, him being a tough guy, I couldn't help but be a little amused, with it and all. But he said, you remember my friend Joe, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, he's married now. His wife is, what do you call it, where people go and look at the houses and, try to determine what's going on inside the house and stuff. Psychic, I guess, and said she came and...
Oh, she was an investigator.
Yes.
Yeah.
She went through the house and says, yes, there's two things here. One's good and one's bad. And said, the good one's trying to keep the bad one in check. Okay. So, years are passing as we go through with this and all. But anyway, got the house remodeled and all that. And then John was coming out here to South Dakota to go hunting with me. All we wanted to go. It was all set up and everything. And another brother-in-law, Lanny was his name. He's also got something in the book. John's not got anything in the book, but Lou's daughter, Paula's her name.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter, they were about 12 or 13, and we was back on the visit. And so my youngest daughter, Shannon's her name. They were 12, and she's like 2 weeks difference in age than Paula. But anyway, before my niece Lola died, I asked her, I said, once, you remember here a few years back, we came down and Shannon went and spent the night with Paula, or spend the day with her. She says, yeah. After I picked her up and we were heading back, says, Shannon told me something strange. Said that Paula told her that she woke up one night and Grandma and Grandpa was standing at the foot of her bed. And she says, that's strange. And I said, did Paula ever tell you anything about that? I'm trying to write this book. She says, she mentioned something, but I thought, yeah. I said, well, do you think Paula mind me calling and asking her? She says, no, I'll give you the number. So I called Paula. I said, Paula, when you were about 13 or so, she's married and got kids of her own there. And I said, do you remember one time when I was back to Carolina and Shannon spent the day with you? She said that you told her that you woke up one night and Mom and Dad, my Mom and Dad, her Grandma and Grandpa, was standing at the foot of the bed. And she says, yes, I remember telling her that. And I said, did you remember telling her that? She says, yes. She was quiet. And all of a sudden, the dam broke. Boy, she just started spelling out all the stuff that happened with her in that house.
That's how it happens. Yeah.
And by the way, Dad's uncle, so 6 generations of our families had the house. And 5 of the 6 is reported paranormal stuff going on in that house. Now, the only reason why I said 5 of the 6, my great uncle was the first one. He died when I was 3. I don't remember him at all. So I have no idea whether he saw things or not,
Yeah.
But practically neighbors, visitors, things that happen routinely in the house, and more so in the winter than in the summer. Of course, the house is closed up more and stuff. Mm-hmm. We're seeing the doors open and closing and fireballs coming through the house and other oddball stuff. A whole gang of us were sitting in the living room one time, and a cross just appears on the wall, glowing. And it reminded me, say something had been hanging there for a long, long time, and now you take down the picture and it's lighter colored because the paint's not as. But this was, more bright. And the one that did the sketches and stuff for the book, Dennis, I guess he's my oldest nephew now, my oldest sister and her oldest son. But then he said, look at this cross. Anybody ever remember like a cross hanging there on the wall or anything? No. I said, I don't remember one. Nobody else did. And he said, but it's got to be a reflection or something. So he went over, and this was in the front room, by the way, where the walk-in always came in and everything. He goes and he covers it up, with his arms and everything, so nothing can reflect on it and all. And finally, he gave up. He said, well, it's there. He said, nobody remembers it. I didn't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So about 20 minutes passed, and he comes walking through again. I was reading a magazine. And he comes walking through, and he says, the cross is gone. And so we looked, sure enough, it was gone. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning that, there is a picture in the book, a photo, an actual photo.
Oh, cool.
It's my nephews and nieces and stuff in there. There's Dad's desk, and this is in the front room, and then the next room would be Mom and Dad's bedroom. Dad's desk is there and everything, and right beside that chair and Dad's desk is where the cross is on the wall. That picture was taken 10 years before this.
Oh, wow.
But it's not a picture hanging there of a cross or anything. It's still the same glowing thing on the wall. All the kids are younger and everything. Denny's only about probably 12 or something in that picture, but it was there even back then. And I almost get faster and quicker. Denny's brother, his name's Greg, another nephew by my older sister. He was in the Marines, and he got leave. And of course, the family, as much as they could, extended family, they come to Bessemer whenever they could, Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they just stay with mom and dad. Well, Greg had come and always stayed in the front room, the room that I moved into, So my sister told me that, Greg's supposed to have leave. He's supposed to get in. I think he's supposed to be late tonight, but he's supposed to get in. He's so excited because he gets to spend, the Christmas holiday with us. Well, I'm there, go to mom and dad. I go in the house and, stuff during the daytime. There are other people in there, but I'm not staying another night. Anyway, I go there, and my sister, King, by the way, is my only sibling who said she never saw anything. Said, I've spent so much time in that house compared to some of you and all, and I never saw anything. But then she told me Greg's foot. I told her, well, I've been here, but I hadn't seen Greg. And she looked sort of funny. And she says, well, strange thing. Said, last night, I already went to bed, said it must have been about 1 o'clock in the morning, because he was supposed to get in late. And he did get in late. And said, I heard somebody outside screaming. So I got up and looked out the window. Said, here's this man running down the road with nothing on but undershorts, screaming at the top of his lungs.
Oh, wow.
Said, I got to looking, and it was Greg. Said, he just kept running. And she says, I don't know what was going on there. He's just in his undershorts. Always got a little bit of a kick when somebody other than my ass was the one, seeing spooks in the house, Anyway, the next evening came. Now, Greg always stayed with his grandma and grandpa, my mom and dad, when you come to town. I stayed with my brother. I wouldn't stay in the house anymore. So I'm up at my brother's house in the evening, and in comes Greg, with this big duffel bag, from the Marines. And he comes in and puts his duffel bag in the corner and sits down at the table. Said my brother had went up to the supermarket to pick up something. He said he wasn't there, Eddie. Anyway, Greg comes in and sits down. I said, oh, Greg. I says, you staying with Uncle Eddie tonight? He says, yeah, I always stay with, up at Grandpa's, but I thought I should stay a night with Uncle Eddie. And of course, I can put 2 and 2 together, So he sits down at the table beside me, and I says, oh, Greg, I says, tell me something. I said, you always stay with Dad. I said, did something happen at the house last night? Boy, he started staring at me, and I mean, not with a friendly look on his face either.
Yeah.
And he said, Uncle John, he says, I know Mom and you always talk about the stuff in the house. And I stayed there many times, and I never saw anything or experienced anything. He said, now I'm going to tell you what happened at the house last night. He says, but I'm telling you right now, I'm going to use his words too. If you tell anybody, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And of course, he was bigger and stronger than a young Marine. I knew he could do that because I was starting to get old. But I also thought that he wouldn't. So he sat down and he says, I got in late last night. And he said, Grandpa got up and let me in. He said, I went in there and got to bed. But he said, I was excited about, getting to come and seeing all the family and everything. He said, so I wasn't sleepy. He said, but I went in Jerry's room. That's the room, that I moved into adjacent to the bedroom. He said, so I went in there and went to bed there. And Mom and Dad, Mom always had a stack of quilts on any bed because we only had heat in one room. But in the summer, it's hot in Carolina. So it's just, you just go and get under a bedspread or maybe a sheet, or something. And you didn't crawl under the quilts, but then in the winter, you had all the quilts to stay warm. So anyway, he said, as soon as I walked in the room, he said, it was freezing cold in there. And he says, how can that be? He said it was hot outside. And there wasn't any air conditioning in that little house either.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it was freezing cold. He said, but I was excited. And I saw a magazine up on the Chester drawers there. And he said, so I thought, well, I'll pick this up and read it, for a little bit until I get sleepy. He said, I just peeled the sheet and the bedspread back and got in the bed and started to read this magazine. Just started reading it. And he said, all of a sudden, he said, it felt like the covers pulled down from me. And I looked, and sure enough, they was down. And he says, now that's weird. He said it was so cold in there. He said, one hadn't undressed except for mum shorts. And he said, I pulled all the quilts back and got under all of them because it was so cold in there. And I took all the covers and bedspread and everything and pulled them up to my neck. And he said, I just laid there for, it was just there for a couple minutes. He said, all of a sudden, all the covers on the bed flew out and landed in the middle of the room.
Oh, wow.
He said, I started to get up and leave. And by then, he said, I thought, wait a minute, you're a Marine. Marines aren't afraid of anything. He said, maybe I can talk to this thing. So I always heard you and Mom talk about that. He said, that was just a thought I had. And he said, that felt like two big arms just scooped up under me and lifted me up to the ceiling and banged me against the ceiling 2 or 3 times. And then it just withdrew the arms or whatever it was, And he said, boy, I come down, wham, landed in the bed. He said, with my rear end, so if he didn't say rear end, says, out the door I ran. And he says, I guess I was running down the road screaming. He says, but I am never, ever staying in that house again as long as I live. And he didn't. But anyway, there's a whole boatload more of stories and stuff. But I know I'm long-winded. I know I'm way past.
No, you're good.
Oh, there is one more for that house. My nephew, Alan, was 15 months older than me, so I was uncle when I was born. We were like brothers, he was the oldest and I was next to the oldest. I was the baby of my family. Then he was the son of my one sister who had never seen anything, Christine, Teeny, we call her. Her husband's the one that found Dad later on. She was already deceased. It was Christmas Eve. I was around seeing my family, my ex's parents and stuff, her family. And I come back, and at this time, Alan was living next door to Mom and Dad's house. It had been his sister's, but her husband got killed in a car wreck, so she couldn't afford the house. And besides that, Alan's dad and her dad died, so she got that house that she had moved across the street. So anyway, I'd been on my rounds seeing everybody, on Christmas Eve, and then I was down talking with Alan. I said, good grief, Alan. I've been to talk to everybody today. And I said, poor Dad sitting up there in that house all by himself. And here it is, Christmas Eve. So this happened before, the demon that got Dad. I said, I got to go up and spend some time with Dad. Alan said, well, yeah, I need to see Grandpa too. I'll walk up with you. So we all walked up. We're in Dad's bedroom. And one thing that happened so often, I told you, was the front door would open and close, and you'd hear somebody walk across the floor, and then, sometimes it'd open and somebody would come in, sometimes it wouldn't,
Mm.
But anyway, we're sitting there talking to Dad, and all of a sudden in the kitchen, glasses start breaking, the biggest racket you ever heard. Tables were being turned over, the refrigerator, it's so loud. 3 of us now. It's 3 of us are together, 3 men together, Dad and Alan and me. But we're talking, but you'd have to stop talking. It was so noisy with things being turned over and thrown against the walls and glasses broken and spoons and forks and stuff, knives being thrown around. You name it. Well, I'm 2 rooms away and the door's open, the back of Dad's room. So I'm sitting there with my back to the door that goes into the front room where it used to door open and close and somebody, sounds of somebody walking would walk in. I'm sitting there with my back to about 3 foot into the room. I'm leaning over, trying to look into the kitchen. I got nerve. There's 2 other men in the room with me, right? Looking over to see if I could see what this was going on in the kitchen. My goodness. While I'm doing that, all of a sudden, the door behind me going into that front room, which went out the front door. I'm sitting about 3 foot in front of that door. That door opens and slams as hard as it could slam.
No, wow.
Well, it startled me for one thing, but I mean, I just leaped out and landed into the middle of the floor where Alan was sitting, you know.
Yeah.
But Dad and Alan both looked at me and they both had grins on their face. Thought they knew it scared the heck out of me, you know. But then I got mad when that happened. I balled up my fist and I went running into the kitchen, you know. I was going to get at least one punch before it tore me to shreds or whatever. And I run in there and there is not a thing in the world in there out of place. I mean, just turning over things and breaking things and all that kind of stuff. Been going on for like 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And there's not a thing in there out of place, period.
Oh, wow.
So I come back and I just put my hands up in the air and shrugged, you know, like, darn if I know, you know.
Right.
And then as I moved away, I moved to different states. I had experiences in different states. I've been a motorcyclist all my life. We went to Nova Scotia, but we stopped in Maine, a group of us. And so things followed me, I think. And we couldn't find the room. It was Labor Day weekend. So we got to Maine, and where we stopped, no rooms available. So we just kept pushing north because we were going to Nova Scotia in Canada. But it was getting dark. And signs everywhere, watch out for the moose, you know, so you don't hit a moose. And so we come and here's this little old sign tacked onto a tree, really weathered piece of wood, you know, tacked on. And it had an arrow pointing down this dirt road, and it said motel. And we looked at each other. That looks awful old, but well, what else are we going to do? Well, let's at least go down and have a look. So we drove down about 4 or 5 miles down that dirt road, and we come out to a cemetery. Beside the cemetery was an old motel, grass all grown up around it. There was ivy growing all on the walls. I even told one of my shit, even Stephen King couldn't come up with this. I vote for going back up the road a couple of miles back to where that sign was. Go back up there at some point. I'll sleep in the ditch tonight. Damn, I'm sleeping out there where the cemetery is. But no, they thought, well, let's at least look. And actually, the rooms were neat. They were clean. But, I mean, the motel itself was okay. But then there was one building out right in the edge of the cemetery. There were like 3 tombstones there right beside of it. But my wife said, I thought I saw a woman in back here at the motel when we were driving in. So I think we'll go around and see if we can find her. Okay. So there was 6 of us. And so we're all standing outside in the group, but there's no number to, you know, to call or anything like that. And so it wasn't me, one of them said, well, I wonder what we're supposed to do to find out how to have a room here. And then just all of a sudden, standing right in the middle of, you know, we were in the circle, like, you know, talking. And like I said, I was ready to vote to going back up the road and sleeping in the ditch. And here's this old woman standing there in the middle of us. We all looked at each other like, where did she come from? And she says, well, there's 4 rooms here. They're not locked, and they weren't because we'd already walked in and looked at a couple of them. She said, so just stay there, and in the morning when you leave, said just leave it. But whatever it was super cheap. Said just put your money on the dresser, and I'll get it when I come back. And so a couple of them said, yeah, that's an idea. Yeah, okay. But then the old woman turned and looked at me. She pointed at that building out there in the edge of the cemetery. She said, you need to stay in that. She said, that's the nicest room we got in the whole. It's separate, but it's the nicest room the motel's got. I didn't say it to her, but I thought, it may be the nicest room you got, but damn if I'm staying in it, you know. But I didn't tell her that. I just said, I just want to stay in here with my friends. We'll take 2 rooms. 4 of us going to stay in this one room, and the other 2, you know, staying in the other one, you know. So that was, you know, after we got out of there the next day, we thought it sort of funny, but I still didn't think it was funny because I'm a little big of a chicken when it comes to the paranormal. That's putting it mildly. Everywhere I've ever been, I was in the hospital. I think it might have been Colorado. I lived in Colorado for about 15 years or so, but it might have been before that, so it could have been in Florida. But anyway, I'm in the hospital. Wife had already gone home for the night, and I'm there, and the door opens into my room. this old lady comes in a hospital gown. I mean, old lady. Walks by the foot of my bed and goes into my bathroom. I thought, well, lady's old. I can tell she's really old. I'm not spring-fed chicken, but she was really old. I wouldn't want to embarrass her, she must think she's in her room. I'll just let her go ahead and use the bathroom, and then if she leaves, okay, and she don't, I guess I'll have to call a nurse at the desk and tell her, that they need to come show the lady back to her room. So as I'm thinking that, boy, I hear this metal thing in the bathroom bouncing around, and it made a lot of noise. It's like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, so it's quiet in there. And I thought, well, maybe she fell and hurt herself or something. So I got to go at least take a look. I went and opened the door. You could only go in. That bathroom didn't serve another room where you could come in from the other direction also. There's nobody in there.
Oh, wow.
But there's a metal urinal laying in the floor. I thought, well, that's weird. I went ahead and picked it up and set it up on the shelf. And I went back and got in my bed. And I wished I hadn't have set it back up. The reason I'm saying that is because there's nobody else in there to knock it off or anything. But I'd already put it back up on the shelf. The morning, I told Beverly, my wife, when she came in to see me, about that. She said, it's probably just a drug. I said, yeah, maybe so, But I said, if I had left that urinal on the floor and I got up the next morning and looked at it and it was still laying there, I would have known it wasn't drugs or something, but I'd put it back up. And I still know it wasn't drugs. I know it happened, but how do you prove it?
Right.
Your wife or what?
I think the experiences are sometimes meant for you, and that's it. You know what I mean? It's a very personal thing.
Here in South Dakota, I've been out twice in the prairies here hunting for deer, and both times with somebody. Now, this is out, just a trail going into it. There's snow on the road, about 6 or 8 inches deep of snow. This time it was my brother-in-law who had a heart attack. Didn't know whether he was going to make it out, but he finally did come. And we walked out, and it's about 1.5 miles out to this one area from there. And you can't drive out there because it's a national prairies. If you drive, they can confiscate your car and fine you thousands of dollars and everything. So, but you can park by this little trail where you come in, and that's bad enough. And when you get snow and it's muddy, you could get stuck out there and have to walk out, but it's about 4 miles to walk out. But anyway, we walk out, and Lanny was my brother-in-law's name, and he said, okay, I'll go, yeah, okay. I'll walk on up here a little ways, or over here. So we're separated, and I said, why if we meet back up, is in my truck, we meet back up about 11 o'clock or so, and then we'll go back to the truck and warm up because it was cold, snow on the ground, and have lunch, and then we'll go out by afternoon hunt. Okay. So, we'll meet up like right in here, at 11. Okay. So comes 11, and I'm walking out. And Lanny's a little bit behind me, but he catches up. And I had thermoses of coffee and stuff in the truck, and food and stuff and sandwiches. Lanny says, I saw a nice buck back over there behind. It's about another 1/4 mile, something like that, maybe a little more than that, away with some trees. And so I saw a nice buck back there. So I'm going to go ahead and walk on out just to see if I maybe can get a shot at it. If I don't, he said, I'll be back along soon, back out. Now, he had just been in the hospital, with his heart. Didn't even know if he's going to make it out there. So I went back to the truck, and I'm eating a sandwich and drinking coffee, but I'm watching. I see Lanny, over in the tree area on the backside. I see him on the backside. He's tall. He's about 6'7" or something, 6'6", and I see him headed back. So I got my binoculars, but I'm watching for deer because sometimes the deer will come back by that area where you park and jump a fence and keep going. So I'm just looking around to see, because the deer could run, or maybe he'd spook one and he'd come running out. I'm looking, and you see movement. That's where you're looking for a deer. Anyway, you see movement, you put your glasses on it and stuff to look and see if it's a deer. And, well, it wasn't. It was him walking back, and I've been sitting in there. I'm getting warmed up and everything good. And I see him headed back. Where he got back about, and I see the path he's traveling and everything. He gets back to where we separated, and I'm coming back to the truck, and he went the opposite way, back over to where those trees were. So he gets back there, and he makes a right. He walks over to this knoll and walks over the top of it. From there, you can look down into a canyon, and the deer like to stay down in that canyon too. So, you might get a shot. I just thought, well, he just walked over there, see if he could see anything. So when he didn't, he didn't come back up. I thought, well, he had a heart problem. Did he fall or just taking a break, or did he see something, a deer, So I figured I better go out and check on him just to make sure he didn't fall or something. And I walk out and he's not there. And I look in the snow, which was 6 or 8 inches deep. There's his tracks going over to the trees. No tracks coming back, from the treat area. Well, I watched him walk all the way to where I was back. And I got to think about this. I went back to the truck. I sat there for a few minutes, drinking coffee, thinking, well, did he go over there and maybe die or something? Because he's having a problem with his heart. And maybe that was his ghost coming back. Because I'm open to ghosts, to there being such a thing as ghosts. And I look, and here he is back at the same place, back behind the trees that he was before. Well, it couldn't be. But, there's no tracks where he come back before, So this time I'm not looking for deer. I keep my binoculars on him all the way. He slowly makes his way back. Gets right back to the spot where we'd separated, where I saw him come back to before. Turns to the right, goes up on and over the top of this knoll where you can look down into the ravine down there, exactly like before. Now this is starting to bother me. So I go back out there, and I went over the knoll, and here he stands, right, looking down into the valley like I'd imagine he would be. But this time, although I was a little nervous about doing it, I walked up to him, took my index finger, and punched him in the chest a couple of times. He turned and looked at me and says, "What the F do you think you're doing?" I said, "Come on, I want to show you something. This is the second time you come back." I said, "Except this time it is you. But I want you to look. There's one set of tracks come back. I watched you come all the way back. This is the second time and all." So anyway, never called it a ghost. I called that an apparition. To separate it from what I know was a ghost, it was a dead relative or something, just called this an apparition. And then 2 years later, I'm with another friend who's also bad health, and go back out, and I see another one, And so that's 2 times out where one of my favorite hunting grounds. I go out, that's happened there. So I've been searching around to find a few more hunting grounds, but I don't want to be the one that's coming back that ain't there anymore, But anyway, that's many of the stories. My sisters and all of them had a lot of things themselves they told me that they experienced. And I think I told you a bunch of stuff. And if we ever do talk again, I'll tell you about all the stuff I read in the books. I've been going to church now for 2.5 years. And I told a couple people there about it. And the 2 of them brought me all kinds of books about the paranormal and from scientists and this and that and the other and everything. And I think it answered quite a few questions for me. So, Jody, I'm sorry for taking so much of your time.
No, don't be sorry.
But I hope that you know that I'm telling you the truth. I hope that.
I have a question for you, Johnny.
Yes.
Have you ever considered that you're psychic?
I think that from Mom's ancestry or my ancestry that, a lot of these people just knew things and all. I asked Mom about the ghost in the house when I lived. I said, why am I the only one here seeing the ghost of Uncle Clarence? Now, eventually other people did, but she looked at me, and Mom just knew things. She was psychic, heavily psychic.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and she was a Christian, so if she told me something, I would have believed it anyway. But anyway, I said, "Well, am I don't know?" And she looked at me and she says, "That's because you were born blind, so you would be able to see." And I didn't know what on earth she was talking. I knew she wouldn't lie to me because of religion, but I didn't have any idea what she was talking about. So I told my wife. My wife was proofreading. What did your mom mean by you were born blind so you'd be able to see? I said, I haven't got the foggiest idea in the world. I never did know. And she said, let me look it up on Google. So you can Google this one.
Were you an in-call birth?
In call?
Yeah, you were born in the sack?
I was, mom told me I was born blind, but then I go and look and saw that where it said, born in a call. Anyway, it's you probably know then, you research, it's an embryonic sac.
Yeah.
You're inside, and sure enough, a baby, if they could see at all, wouldn't be able to see very well with this membrane over their head. So those people, by the way, was prized back in the day. About 1 in a little over 80,000 babies is born. Doctors have got an instrument now that they can slit it, and all. So, but that was some of the stuff I was talking about that I've learned a whole lot, and I have learned a lot of other stuff since then about the paranormal and stuff. But maybe one day we'll talk again or something. But anyway, are you guys okay with what I've told you?
Oh, we have gotten plenty of stories for you, and we appreciate every one of them.
Yeah, this is fantastic. It was so great to talk to you and hear all of your stories.
Yeah, one day, maybe when we're drinking a beer or something, we can just yak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bunch more, and boy, there's a bunch from my family, too,
Yeah.
that, they told me. Of course, many of them are gone. And this one niece that I told you moved there and stuff, and man, she told me a bunch of stuff. She lived there for 25 years now. So the whole thing has been a relief to me, writing the book and finally getting it off my chest.
I can imagine.
And also, there's other things in it about praising my family and what good people they are and this sort of stuff, but you're in the paranormal stuff. But anyway, the book was good getting it off my chest. Every review, which is not that many, but every review was 5 out of 5 stars, except one. She was a teacher, and I'm not a writer. So that was 4 out of 5 stars. I can live with that,
Yeah.
But anyway, you both are very nice, and thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, John.
And I do want to tell people out there because this is real, So I even got in the book, for somebody out there, you're going through this. I call it just know for the 3 ways, that just know things. Just know that you aren't the only one, So
Yeah, I think that's important.
thank you very much, you both. And I don't care how many questions you might have sometime or clarification. Give me a buzz. I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Okay.
Sounds good, Johnny. I'll let you know when the episode's up.
Good deal. Oh, I know you sent me something, but I went on.
Yeah.
And then it had some of your things, and I at least looked through one, and all.
Oh, what did you listen to?
It's the one where the guy, I think, was a minister's son, maybe, or minister or something. Anyway, it's in the church.
That was with Joe.
Oh, yeah, with Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd recommend
friend.
those episodes. You'd probably like those episodes from your experiences.
But guys, if I told you everything, you'd been sitting here for a week instead of 2 hours.
Well, so we got to check out your book then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot in it, but and it's a lot of stuff is summarized at the end, as far as the abilities and stuff in the epilogue. And I'll be happy if you read about my mother and father, what great people they were.
Yeah.
And actually my family, but they were good Christian people. We were poorer than dirt, and I was lucky. I got a scholarship. I got to go away. I wouldn't trade my child, except for the bad part.
Right.
I wouldn't trade my childhood for anything in the world. There's also 9 people or so, some was neighbors and all, who attested to the stuff that they saw in the house.
Oh, wow.
And even my wife right now, that bathroom that I told you that was my great uncle's place, I don't think there's ever been anybody who walked in there and used the bathroom that didn't get the creeps. And even my wife says, good grief, so that's in the book too. So
Yeah.
anyway, I appreciate you people. I'm happy that you decided to do the podcast. And of course, I'm happy that if it causes somebody to buy a book, and
Yeah.
and my story gets told to other people, I'll be extremely happy. But anyway, good night, people.
Happy to have you, Johnny.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
I'll tell you what, Johnny, before we get going, for the listeners, could you tell us the title of your book and where we could find it?
Yes. The title of the book is, it's Johns, Johns, and that's with an apostrophe S, ghost, and that's plural, Ghosts, because I've seen more than the one. Started out with one, but it expanded. That's then colon, and then haunted till I die, ? So John's Ghost, haunted till I die. It's on Barnes and Noble.
Do you want us to post the link in the show notes?
Yeah, but it also comes in paperback and it comes in a regular book too.
Okay.
We'll be sure to post it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
And don't hesitate to call me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that concludes our second part of our interview with Johnny Hull. Johnny, I know you're out there. I know you're listening. We really appreciate it. There's some great stories we had there. And just so you know, we believe you. Objectively, we're here to take people's stories down, to listen to their stories. We're not here to analyze it.
Right. It's your own personal experience.
Yep. It's not like we're out there and we're investigating, your home and all that. We're just taking it at face value for what it is.
Yeah.
Kind of cataloging your story.
Yeah.
Like we do with everybody else, which is, it's kind of interesting to me that we get to actually hear these stories and we put them together and we have these recordings and it's history. We're documenting it.
Yes. Thank you for coming on and sharing your stories with us. It was fascinating.
So Gabrielle,
Yes.
at the end of the episode, Johnny mentioned something and I thought maybe we should talk about it a little.
So he mentioned that he was born, I forget exactly how he stated it, but then I was able to put it together to figure out that he meant that he was born in call, which is something I had heard about before, and how it relates if you're born in call, that you sometimes have different types of like abilities, right? Like spiritual abilities, typically being like clairvoyant or like mediumship. So then I started to kind of look into it, and there's two kinds of call births that you could have. One is end call, where a baby is born completely in the amniotic sac. And one is called call, where the baby is born and part of the amniotic sac covers a portion of their face or head. And typically their eyes are covered. It's also referred to as a veiled birth and a mermaid birth.
Yeah, which I could see how they get that, because the baby's born entirely inside the sac, right?
Right, which has fluid in it.
Right. So they're thinking it's not breathing air. The baby's in there breathing the amniotic fluid still, and it kind of resembles what a mermaid would be able to
like a
breathe
sea
underwater.
Creature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The word call, and it's not spelled like it sounds. It's not CALL. It's CAUL.
Right.
ENCAUL. And call. And basically, that word it's an old French word that means cap or close fitting hat.
Right.
So I could kind of see that with especially a call birth, where it's partially born outside of the sac, and it's it's kind of covering its head, it's
like a helmet.
Like a helmet, yeah, basically.
And they actually refer to the amniotic sac is actually called the call, and that's where it kind of comes from.
So how does this fit into folklore then?
So it comes in because it's typically seen, they're very rare, this type of birth. It's like 1 in 80,000 babies will be born with one of these two occurrences. So they're considered good luck. It's protection. They're considered to be like miracles. There's like different cultural beliefs that surround babies who are born this way. And some beliefs, they will actually like raise the child to be like a mystic.
Oh, wow.
Or like a prophet.
That's cool.
Because of this birth. There's also a belief if the baby is specifically born like call, they believe the baby will never drown.
Oh, this goes back to what you're saying about the sailors, right? The
Yes.
sailors used to take the amniotic sac from these births and they would dry them out.
Yeah. And they would pay a high price for the amniotic sac, and they would bring it with them on their voyage to kind of protect them from drowning.
Wow.
I know. It's so interesting. So some traditions like Irish and Slavic, they call it being born in a bonnet, and they consider the babies to be lucky when they're born this way. And then there's also like Eastern European, Celtic traditions. They believe this is where the second sight comes, the clairvoyance. The child might have healing abilities or connections to the spiritual world, like we're seeing with Johnny and his stories.
Yeah, and it sounds like these traditions sort of carried over.
Yeah, into like even like modern times.
Yeah, so again, you have people moving here and bringing their folklore with them.
Right, right. So Roman midwives would sell the calls, the amniotic sacs, to attorneys because they believed it could help them win court cases.
Why? How would that
I know,
help?
it's really interesting.
How did they draw that correlation? These are like good luck babies. It's basically
Yeah.
what they are, right?
Yeah.
Wow, crazy.
It's just interesting to see how people's different like beliefs and cultures kind of influence their thoughts on being born like this, where also, very interestingly, the Hmong culture, they believe,
You're back to the Hmong.
yeah, they believe that when you pass away, that you will come back for, I forget the word, there's like a special word for it, and it means jacket in their language. And what they do, like it's a Hmong tradition, when your baby's born, you bury the sack underneath your house where the baby was born. And they believe that when you pass, I think it's so sweet, when you pass away, you relive your life and you see all your memories, and the last memory you see will be your birth.
Oh, wow.
And then you're able to go under the house and take your amniotic sac, which you'll wear like a jacket, into the afterlife.
Wow, that is weird.
Right. I think it's so
I mean,
sweet.
I don't mean to say it's weird. You know what I mean?
It's so interesting.
You have like a plethora of knowledge that you just like kind of like, you know, go back in there and pick it out of your brain. I think you read a book about that once.
Yes,
right?
I did. The spirit catches you and you fall down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's such an interesting book. It's about the young girl is born with epilepsy, but in the Hmong culture, if you're born with epilepsy, you're considered to be touched by the spirit. So they don't want to treat you because they believe you have a direct link to God. So then our Western culture comes in and kind of interferes with the family. And it's basically like a case study of someone who is living with the family and collecting their information as they're going through this. It's a really good book. It's a really good book.
Well, there you go, folks. You got a book recommendation. So anyway, we have another book recommendation, right?
Sure.
I guess we'll put Johnny's book
Yes.
in our show notes, the link to his book.
Yeah, definitely check it out. If you enjoyed these last 2 episodes, you know, his book is full of even more stories, different things that he's experienced throughout his life.
Yep.
His family members have experienced.
Yep, and he tells you through his, it's almost like a first-person sort of perspective. You get to relive it through his personal experiences with his family. He talks a lot about his family, how wonderful they are and all that. Check it out.
Thanks again, Johnny, for coming on and talking to us.
And thank you, everybody, for listening.